Okay, so we're going over congruence. We already learned in class what CPCTC stands for. That was corresponding parts of congruent triangles are congruent. And what that basically meant was, if I know that two triangles are congruent, then I can show that all their sides are congruent, all their angles are congruent. What we're going to do now is we're going to go backwards. Since corresponding parts are congruent, I have to use that to show the triangles are congruent. So I'm going to show you what it would look like if all, a little bit better, if all of my angles and stuff were told to me. Remember the way that you are told that two sides are congruent are by the little dashes, and the number of dashes match with the number. Forgive my shapes, they're not perfect because I just drew with my hand. But what's going to happen is, even if it's on paper, you can't just judge your eyes. You're going to have to look for these marks, because even if it looks congruent, it may not be exactly right. So these little dashes, this one will be congruent to this one will be congruent to this one to this one, because that's the same number. And we're going to have the same number of angle marks telling me my angles are congruent. Let's call these triangles ABC and XYZ. And if you remember from in class, that would mean that my angle A was congruent to my angle X. And I'm just going to give you one side as well. My side AB, which is a segment, is congruent to my side XY. Once again, a segment. You must tell me it's an angle, because this could possibly be a point. You must put the line over it, because when I talk about the actual line instead of the number, that's always going to have to be there. If the congruent sign is there, the line needs to be there. If the congruent sign is there, the angle sign needs to be there. Okay? There are 5 postulates that I can use to show triangles are congruent. If their sides or angles are congruent. Those are SSS, SAS, ASA, and angle side. Finally, hypotenuse leg, which is going to be different than all the other ones. So first we're going to do SSS, which stands for side, side, side. And this one, I can use this to show that triangles are congruent when I know that all 3 sides are congruent. So let's go ahead and draw these triangles. Let's do. And I'm going to tell you this one's congruent to this one. So if I have this, I'm going to be able to see where things are congruent. And I'm going to use triangles ABC and XYZ this entire sheet. So what I'm going to get you to write when you do these is you're going to have to write out all three pieces. You have to show me that sides are congruent. So I have to show 3 sides are congruent to use this. So I have AB is congruent to XY. Don't forget our line segment markers. I have AC is congruent to XZ. And these are all things that they've already told me. I'm using stuff that they told me. I told you because I just made this triangle up, right? But it will be told to you. Finally, BC is congruent to YZ. And then I'm going to put a little arrow. Therefore, triangle ABC is congruent to triangle XYZ. This kind of means therefore, or I showed it because of this. And I will always write by whatever property I used. So we're going to go on to the next one. You just had side, side, side. Now we're going to have side, angle, side. I can use this to show triangles are congruent when I know that there are 2 sides congruent with an angle congruent between them. And I'm going to underline between them because it is very important that you get them in this order. We do not have an ASS property. I repeat that. We do not have an ASS property. So let's draw those triangles. I'm going to go ahead and flip this upside down. Because remember, my course congruent triangles, it doesn't matter the shape as long as I know some angles information. So now they're facing opposite direction, but I can still use one of these properties to prove it. They are congruent. So what I have to do is show that there is an angle in between the 2 sides. So I'm going to start by doing this again. I'm going to show I have 2 sides. And that's pretty easy. I'll write that in a different color. AB is definitely congruent to XY. They told me. Notice how I keep A and X in the same place since they're the same vertex. They're the same, they've got the corresponding angles. I also know that XZ is congruent to AC. So now I have 2 of the things that I need to prove that this is congruent. I also need to be able to tell that the angle between them is congruent. And you may do this with a number, you may do this with something else, but here we just have a marker. So we can say, well, of course, angle A is congruent to angle C. If I had angle Y and angle B, they would be congruent. They're still corresponding angles, but I cannot use them. I can only use it if it is in between the lines. And you can always notice that because they're the letter that got put there twice. And that is an X. They are the point that was used twice. This is here twice. This is here twice. And then my triangle ABC is congruent to triangle XYZ by side angle side. Yes, you do have to write all this out. You will have to write all this out every single time. Now we're on to AAS. You've guessed it, angle, angle, side. I'm going to go on and I'm going to do ASA and write that in at the same time because as you noticed, it also has two angles on one side. The difference is here the side is on the end, here the side is in the middle. I can have angle, angle, side or angle, side, angle, but they are two different properties. So I have to make sure that I name the one I'm using. So angle, angle, side, I can use this to show triangles are congruent when I know that I have two angles congruent in a row, then congruent sides. With angle side angle, when I have two congruent angles with a side between them. So my examples there. As you can see, this is in between. I have two angles then a side. This kind of makes a line. So I would use the same property. Angle A is congruent to angle X. Angle Y is congruent to angle B. AC is congruent to XY. And that tells me my triangles are congruent. And I'm sorry about up here. These can switch back and forth. What I did was fine, and it will be fine if you do it, but it may be easier for you to keep it in order. I apologize. And down here. Make sure you write your line segment that is congruent in between them. Okay. And that's probably enough for this video. What I'm going to do is go ahead and give you HL in class. Okay? So bring this to class next time and we will go over HL and finish filling in that one piece.